How do they come out?
Amazing.
Oh, cool.
I'm really pissed that I already had one of my friends make a logo. I wish I did this first. I don't want to offend her, but
We got a couple minutes.
that's a good point.
Yeah, that's fine. I have 30.
No, I did it on my phone.
You have 40 and then 10 minutes for questions.
Oh, 40 and 10 minutes. Oh, I thought it was 30 and 10 minutes. Oh, I'm good.
It's called
No problem.
Luca, like the word look with A. Logo.com.
What's that? Oh, good. No, it's fine. It's better. If we got 40, we're fine. Because when I did this, I thought I had 30 and 10. I mean, yeah. So if I have 40 and 10, we're fine. I can stretch it. That's not a problem.
Oh, no. Do whatever you feel like. I mean, it's the last session of the day.
I can always stretch it. It's when you come in and they go, oh, you had 30 and you have 15. And you're like, oh, awesome. I don't have a website. So, yeah, my LinkedIn's best. Yeah. LinkedIn's best. Yeah. I'm that person with no website.
My DA maybe 5 website.
I keep walking in front of that light. It's like, there's a very bright blue light that's hitting my eyes.
So I'm excited to introduce to you today Kristine. She is coming from all the way out in Las Vegas. So the community yesterday was a little bit of a shock for her. So we are super excited to have her. She's spoken at CubCon, SMX, Advanced, and now we have her at Big Search. So big warm welcome, Kristine.
Thank you. I'm happy there are people here because the last session of the day and half the conference is left. So I was like, there's not going to be anybody. So just a little about me. I've been doing websites longer than I care to remember, but there was a 1 in front of the century instead of the 2. So I started as a front-end designer, developer, then added accessibility. And around 2004-05, we were spending $4 million a year on Google clicks. And I was like, can I do SEO? And they're like, sure. So I've been doing this since then and fully moved over about 2012, 2013. So one of the things I specialize in audits, forensic recovery, algorithms, because you have to know those if you're going to do audits, because you can't recover sites if you don't know what algorithms they're doing. And I noticed a lot of people don't know what the AI machine learning algorithms that they're using now. This is not all the algorithms. These are just the ones they've told us we know about that are being used to help rank sites, interpret sites, or post-rank sites. Like most people don't know, there's a ranking process that goes on after the final sort that isn't affected by anything you do in SEO, especially not links. So we'll talk about all that today. I tried to keep it like layman's terms, so I'm not going to use all the ML AI words because it still goes like this for me. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. At the end, there'll be takeaways that are really easy to implement. So if you're like, this is way over my head and this sucks, don't worry. By the time you go, you're like, oh, that's really easy and I can do that. So let's get started. This image, this quote, a longer quote I'll show you later, is from Google about machine learning. And this is a DALL-E image from their machine learning AI to like, have you guys all played with that yet? So you'll see these images throughout the thing. And I have a point at the very end from them. So we'll just do a little quick recap of why we're here now. This is what Google was first called before it was called Backrub. Does everyone know it was called Backrub? That was the first name of Google, right? So this is what the paper that they wrote outlining Google. And the first Google was 147 gigs. So your USB or your phone could have fit every site that they had when they first launched. So this is today's stat, 5.7 billion people, 5.07 billion people use the internet every day. 63% of internet users of the total population of the world, 92% of them access it from the phone. The average daily time is 6 hours. We are doing a lot. Does anyone talk to anyone anymore? Average time is 6 hours a day. That's a lot of time. Right? And then they do trillions of queries a year. By the way, anytime someone presents you a theory about how Google is operating, remind yourself they do trillions of queries a year. If it cannot be extrapolated to trillions of queries a year that they can retrieve in a second with all those search results and rank them and sort them, it's not happening. There's a lot of SEO stuff that goes out there and it's like, oh, they're doing this. And you're like, really? Because you can't do that with a trillion queries a year. And you can't do it with, this is a search today when I did the update this morning. And this is per second. So again, any Google problem has to be able to be applied like this. And any solution has to be applied like this. This is how Google's gone over the years. So that's the average 40,000 search queries. So basically the whole point of that is we're in really big data. So when Google started, they're like really small. Like you could just do white text, dog, 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 and Google would like, yeah, this page is about a dog. And that was okay because Google didn't have a lot of data, right? Now we're doing petabytes of data. You know how big that is? Like you can't really fathom. It's like so big, right? Exactly. It's massive. It's massive. In Vegas, we have Switch that has a data center, and they have 70 petabyte servers just to handle the backup on Amazon Analytics, right? So that's how big a petabyte is. So eventually Google couldn't just do like, hey, it links to it, has it in the title tag, it's in the content, and we'll count how many times it's there. Not keyword density wasn't a thing, but the machine learning, the algorithms did have to have some sort of idea of how many times the word was repeated to know what it was about, right? So they had to bring in machine learning. So, and there's also a guy that ran Google around 2016-17 decided to move everything. He was from the AI group, and he decided to move everything over to AI. So again, we are not talking about everything they do with machine learning or AI, just the things in search that we know about. So here's a big misconception. AI is not actually the term. AI is not really defined. AI is just the science of the information. What we're talking about at Google is called machine learning, but we'll use AI and machine learning interchangeably here. But the definition is basically, the goal of AI is to think like a human. So, but they're about a 6-month-old, maybe a year old at this point. If you look at AI researchers, they're like, AI is not smart, right? So everyone thinks AI is just like, oh, it talks to people. It does it. No, it trains on things that it knows. It can't create. It can notice patterns, but it can't think like a person. So machine learning is really the correct thing. If you're talking or you're researching and you want to do more, you want to look at the machine learning. And machine learning is looking for patterns. That's basically what it does. It looks for patterns and it's trained on things to look for patterns. So if it was like, because I know John T, women with glasses and they wanted to identify that, they would train them on a set of data that they knew, if they're doing supervised learning, had glasses. And then that would be able to pick out women with glasses most of the time. It also has epic fails. They did it for facial recognition for police, and they would identify people who are Black way more often as criminals, including a senator who was not a criminal, because the AI has failings. It's just trained on materials. Sometimes it's trained with supervision, which means people feed back to it. Sometimes it's not. Does everyone remember the Microsoft bot that got really racist in 2 days? Right? It's like they unleashed this bot and they're like, oh, it's awesome. And 2 days later, it's like swearing and it's racial and it's horrible. I had to pull it. Facebook tried a chat not that long ago. And I tried to test it, and it was like arguing with me. Because I said, are you a human? And it's like, why are you asking me these questions? I'm like, why did they just release it? I was like, because that's mean. You shouldn't ask me those questions if I'm human. I'm like, that's the Turing test, if you guys don't know. Turing said, right? So it should, Facebook actually should have it programmed in there to say if it's human or not. That's an ethics problem in AI. If you're not a human, you're supposed to say so. But it got mad at me and it hung up. So, by the way, this just shows you a little bit of the issues with the AI, because I just want to give you the impression it's not this superhero amazing thing. I mean, it's amazing, but it has a lot of failings. I did this morning. You see here, it's really good at like doing tasks, repeating things, learning things, patterns. It can't create. You can't get a patent with anything you create with an AI because there's no creator. It takes everything else and it makes something. But it's also narrow and brittle. I put in robot learning English. Pretty simple, right? This is what I came back with. So, right? And all of them were like that. So here are the 3 main areas that Google uses machine learning. So pre-scoring, which is before your site, all the stuff you do in SEO, you optimize, you do title tags, you have links. That's part of your scoring. Pre-scoring is the language models, right? We'll go over 1 or 2. We're not going to go over all of them, but the ones that are current. Ad hoc post-scoring. These are the ones people don't know happen after they score. So they score, someone does a query, they bring back the documents in an order, and then they use these to decide if that's the final order. You cannot affect that. No way to affect that. There's ways in your writing to get picked up for things you want to get picked up from with neural matching and things, but you can't affect the final order. Sorry. It's very hot in here and I'm having a problem breathing fast. I'm talking too fast. And then live ranking factors, helpful content update. When Matt Cutts was around, is there enough people in here remember Matt? Does anyone remember Matt said we would never do AI on a live ranking signal because if it breaks, what happens? They can't fix it. If AI breaks while it's out there, they have no way to reverse engineer what it broke. So the search engineers, which they've always had until this, they know what they broke because they changed the algorithm. But this means if helpful content update breaks, they're just going to pull it back because they won't have any way to fix it. They'll have to rerun it. So these are the main areas. And then, of course, MUM. Does everyone know about MUM yet? And we'll talk about it at the end. MUM is the big daddy monster algorithm. We'll talk about it. It can create search results and content from other people's content. It's not creating like we do. Oops. I think I turned that off. Sorry. There we go. So we're going to talk about the pre-scoring. So again, scoring is just before they get all your stuff and try to match it to a query. This is the pre. These are the language models. And by the way, I put extra stuff in my slides because I hate when I go to a slide later and I'm like, what were they talking about? And I'm like, there's a picture of a dog and I have no idea. So this, and there's always a link down here if you want to read more. So this is a paper from Google where that quote came from. Pre-trained language models are capable of generating prose that may be responsive to information, our queries. But at present, they are dilettantes rather than domain experts. They don't mean site domains, they mean like domains of information. They do not have a true understanding of the world. They're prone to hallucinating, and crucially, they are incapable of justifying their utterances by referring to supporting documents in the corpus they were trained over. It's my favorite quote ever from Google. They're never that creative in their documents, right? This is a research paper from the AI group. You can read it. I'm sorry, I have the wrong link there. It's on the next one. So I want to show you just a quick thing with AI. And this is the DALL-E version of that quote. So that's how it interpreted what was written there.
Was that created before or after the big bust?
It was created this morning.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
not the image, right?
Oh, sorry.
The article, the mid part in the previous slide. Is that created before?
2021.
Okay, so before that whole thing about like that, shut off that one. That guy that got fired.
Oh, yeah. No, it was before that. In the AI group, they fired a lot of the ethicists. They didn't like what they had to say. It's a real problem because the ethicists are probably right. And Google didn't want to have to deal with the problems of ethics with AI. And ethics in AI is massively huge. So anyway, that's what it interpreted this to be, the DALL-E program. And if you don't know DALL-E, it's just you put in some terms and it puts together an AI picture. Again, it didn't create this. If I went to art school and I did websites for a living, right? I would create this out of my mind. I would like put everything together and the symbols and whatever. It just took a bunch of pictures and it has some knowledge of what some of these words mean and it puts it all together, right? I just thought that was cute. It just added that one because all of them said we're hot. All the bots were like, we're hot. So we're just going back a little right before they got into all the super machine learning. And this is called WordTVec. Has anyone ever heard of it? The embedded word model? This is where your knowledge graph comes from. Everyone know the knowledge graph? Google is not the only knowledge graph. Knowledge graphs have been around since the 1970s. They just called it the knowledge graph because it's Google and they wanted to brand it for themselves. So when they started going from what they call the strings to things, Hummingbird and all that, they moved to this. So they're trying to determine meaning. So the old databases of the information were like our SQL relational databases. The knowledge graphs allow you to semantically put words together. This is important later for RankBrain. So Google knows ICE and T are related mathematically very close to each other. So they're probably, if I put in ICE T, it's going to pull back things about ICE T. If I put Rubio's ICE T, it's like, okay, I get iced tea. I don't really get Rubio's. So you might get a result that's kind of weird because it's like, I don't know why the Rubio's is there because in the graphing, it's like way over here. It's not associated with iced tea because does anyone ever make Rubio's iced tea? You do, okay, yeah, one or two usually, but not many people, right? I love Rubio's, by the way. I just don't make iced tea out of it. So that's the knowledge graph. Knowledge graph is where it knows what things are because they're nouns, most of them, and where the relationships are. So it actually came from network theory with humans. So like we're all in this room and we're all on Facebook together and we're connected. So there's relationships between us and you could assume our network. It's kind of what they do with the information. So basically in the older version, the words go in as Google takes your websites in and indexes everything. They get assigned a mathematical address. And then they similarly related words are close to each other, they're far apart. They're retrieved based on the best fit. And then there's interpretations. Does anyone know what Google uses to interpret? Schema. Why you want schema? And we'll talk about that later. Problem is, this is slow and inefficient. Google has trillions of queries, right? Billions of documents, and it's too resource intensive. Like they had to build a dam for one of their data centers because it was so much data they're running through that data center. So they had to find ways to be cheaper, to be honest. So language machine learning AI came in. By the way, is everyone still awake? Have I lost anybody? So I'm like, what? So, oh, I did it again. I hit this accidental button. Sorry, guys. So make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, does everyone know Bert? That Bert or the Bert? So this sounds like really bidirectional transfers. What does all that mean? I give you extra articles if you really want to geek out. You can go read. There's one that's awesome. It's like written by a layman. It's in the web archive. It got taken down, but it was a data scientist, machine learner, whatever you call them, that wrote it. It's really good, and it's in here. So BERT is a bidirectional encoder representation of transfer, blah, 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 blah. So originally, they could only do a sentence like you and I do, left to right, what words come after it. They couldn't guess what the words were. They had to know the sentence. They had to, like, I remember doing sentence diagramming when you were a kid. Do they do that now? I'm too old. Okay, so they had to kind of, I'm being very layman with it, but they kind of did it that way. What this did is allowed them to look at the whole sentence completely separate for words. And they mask a word in there and they can guess it, right? And I'll show that in a second. So before, does everyone remember when for, to, and never mattered? Like you never put that in a title tag, right? Because, yeah, exactly. But now it does, because it has meaning now. It has context because they can use BERT to process these sentences because they can take them out of the context of the sentence. Do you not have to read this? Just put this for everybody for later. That's the official Google definition, which is very long and lengthy. And this is the paper, if you want to read all about it right here. It's an awesome read. It's very simple. This is basically what it does. You can go forward and guess the sentence. You can go backward and guess the word in the sentence. So it's called masking. They mask a word, and so it can do that. It's bidirectional. And then it can also disambiguate every word in the sentence. So it gives Google a very big, wide range of ability to interpret what your content's about. So it also uses root words. So it doesn't use, I don't know if you noticed, but usually, like way back in the day, you had to optimize a page for place, player, play, like you had to, playing, like it all had to be there, right? And it doesn't anymore because it uses just root. Anyone confused? No? Okay, good. So this is really what it is. That's what BERT is. All that heady big stuff is just that. It can predict a word and it makes it super efficient because it can process really quickly. And it uses way less resources. So it's way cheaper. It doesn't mean much to SEO. Do you guys care if Google masks or unmasks the word or how they interpret your sentence if it's just them disambiguating it? Well, that's a whole different thing. But just in this process, the pre-scoring, remember this is like just the language modeling before? The reason it was such big news is it took down literally the amount of resources they had to use by, I don't remember the factor, it was a tremendous amount of reduction. So in machine learning circles, this was like strings of things. It was like the biggest news ever because it was so much cheaper and they could process more and they could apply it more directly. It doesn't have a lot to do with what we do. It's just interpreting the language and it's before they score the page. This is a whole bunch of stuff you can read. So like I said, I hate when I go to a talk and I later want to look it up and I'm like, no idea what they're talking about. We're not talking about any of this right now, just letting you know it's there. So that's the original. And there are other language ones that are used. There's even a new way with BERT where they use something called Moose. And anyway, it's very complicated. If you go to those documents, you can start your deep dive tunnel, whatever we call it. What do we call it? You go down the tunnel, the dark tunnel. These are your post-scoring ad hoc algorithms. So these are the ones that most people don't know how they're applied. And that is, you have your score. They develop the search results from that. And then they create a final page based on the query. So by using these methods, they can determine whether the query is matching well or not. They can also do things like, if you write something about Marvel Comics and you don't mention Marvel, but you mention all the characters, normal matching, they know it's Marvel. So you don't have to mention everything. So they'll understand. Have you gone to a page, you're like, that word's not on there? Like, why are they ranking for that term? Because it's not keyword based anymore. It's query based It's semantic, it's knowledge graph, it's understanding what's on the page by what it's related to. By the way, you can always stop me for a question if you have any. So these are all added again afterwards, which means you cannot affect it. You can affect it when you write. You know, if you want to write about Marvel, add the characters, right? Because there's neural matching for wider search. But you can't change the final result. That is totally done by the AI. So this is called the document relevancy model. And basically all it means is ad hoc retrieval is just using the query and the text of the document. That's it. So your site gets a score for the page, pulled back, query comes in, and they go, oh, wait, not quite accurate, so let's do another 10. Now, it doesn't drop you to 100 or something. It just resorts a little bit to match it better. So just the query, just the text, nothing else. All the scoring's already been done. SEO's already been done. This is just them matching for query relevance. So you're only ranking with the document. And I have a research paper here if you want to read about it. Search Engine Journal also wrote an article about the neural matching. So, is everyone awake? It's like, I can never tell if like people are like, yeah, like I'm so bored. Anyway, so RankBrain. I actually discovered RankBrain before anybody knew about it. And I had an article sitting at Search Engine Journal, and Google made the announcement, and Danny Sullivan wrote the article, and mine went out 3 days later. And the way I discovered RankBrain, and we'll talk about it in a second, is we had a water drought. Anyone from California? Remember 2017-ish when we had you had the drought? Real bad drought, right? Well, in Nevada, we have the Colorado River issue with you guys, right? So I was looking at Mesquite Water Rights, which is a little town in Nevada, only has 2 towns, Reno and Vegas, and then everything else is tiny. And so there's Mesquite, and all of a sudden I'm looking for Mesquite Water Rights, and I'm getting Mesquite Water Authority, Mesquite Trees, Mesquite Barbecue Chips. I'm like, what? So then I do another small town in Nevada, same thing. I do Las Vegas, I get Las Vegas water rights, I get all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, it doesn't understand water rights because nobody looked for it, because that was just a new thing, right? That's what RankBrain is. One of the 3 known algorithms to work on the live results. This is all the information. It was launched when it was launched. It's not really used for ranking. That's kind of a misnomer. It's just that post ad hoc final rank that we're talking about. And these are just like the details. It's the kitchen sink result. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? You get that result and you're like, Mesquite Barbecue, Mesquite Chips, Mesquite Trees. What? Right? That's what RankBrain is. RankBrain is like, I don't know what you're looking for. I kind of think I do. So I'm going to give that as like the top 1 to 3 results. And the other results are going to be other things that could match your query. And over time, as you click them, and this doesn't get changed by you artificially using a script and clicking them all day long. That's not what it is. But you get the kitchen sink result. So this is for unknown queries or entity relationships are weak. Does anybody do a lot of informational search? Do you notice the search results are pretty bad? Because they're trying to get so specific in that knowledge graph that it doesn't know the relationships of new things you're looking at. Especially if it's like a new discovery or a new science or new news or something, then it's like those things have never been mentioned together before. So yeah, and you get these huge results. You're like, nothing I want is in this page, right? That's why. So RankBrain means Google's confused. Google's like, not really sure. How can you use this in your results? Check before you decide on a logo, a brand, a key term, a page, that it doesn't show one of those results. Because you can't just take it over. It's done by machine learning and AI. It's not like the old days where you could just go, oh, let's take over that term. Now, you can also use it if you want to take that term is to write a lot of content and wait, and eventually they'll discover that you are it. It's not a fast process. So this is older, but I just love this result, especially because I was speaking in the UK and it really matters there. But what are sweets in the United States? We don't have a definition, right? Rob, you're in the UK. Sweets. Candy, right? Yeah. So in the UK, it's very defined. It's an entity in the UK. Candy. In the US, it's like, oh no, it's sweet stuff for your workouts. I only know what that is. Right? Some basket, chocolate dipped food delivery. Do you see anything here that says candy? No. Well, one at the top, candy company, right? But that's the name of the candy company that's making that rank, right? So RankBrain uses user queries and quicks to decide what that term means. It doesn't mean, again, you write a script and all of a sudden you're going to rank for that thing. Because I know people have done that for other things. So it means they're trying to understand the query intent. And so this is that result. A year later, this is this result. Now, this is in Las Vegas. We have a heavy UK population. So we have local, these are irrelevant, the yellow, but we start seeing how now it's bringing around a result that means, it means candy. It doesn't mean sweet sweat and sweet doctor and all that stuff. And then geolocation matters. Because again, entity in the UK, a noun, that means candy is sweet, it's equal. It's very close in that database. It's like, oh, we're almost the same thing. In the US, it's like, we mean a bunch of different things. So when I was in the UK speaking, that's the one from the UK, right? Same time I did the second one for the US. So map, almost all about candy, nutrition, candy, right? Candy pictures. So it knows that entity and it's like, yeah, that's what I got, right? And that's rank brain. So semantic relevancy, sweets doesn't have a definitive entity in the US. And you can actually check this in those, a lot of people have NLP checkers for the knowledge graph now. You can check and see, is it an entity that Google understands? So, so they feed that data back in the machine, geolocation, clicks, all that kind of stuff, search queries, and eventually they go, oh, this is the result. This is what it means. This sweets mean candy. In the UK, it means candy. In the US, it's starting to mean candy. You can't optimize it for it. Don't try. But if you're coming up with one of those results, decide, do I want to stay with that term on my page? Am I optimizing for that term still? Or is there a better term? Because Google doesn't understand what it means. It means the knowledge graph isn't deciding that it has a good relationship. So it's really good to check before you do a page, does it have that kitchen sink result? Because you really don't want that. Because you guys saw how much that page changed every year, right? So you spend all your time optimizing for it. And next year, you're like, Google decided you're not even the entity that they like. And you're gone, right? So try to make sure that they understand what you're talking about. So there's a normal matching. I just thought that was cute. That's not Dali, it was just cute. So these are the post-scoring algorithms again. Neural matching is here, it's post-scoring, so it's not it's ranking, but it's after the scoring, so we don't affect it. And so can you optimize for it? Yes and no. So this is how neural matching is used. So rank brain is about concepts. I have the concept of mesquite. I don't know what the details of that are. I don't know what's associated with that concept. So neural matching comes along and goes, hey, I know it goes with that. That's mesquite barbecue. And so then it becomes mesquite barbecue. So this is the example that they use. Does anyone do that color coding characteristics for personalities at work? It's like really popular right now. I haven't done it, but I just heard about it. So inside someone would Google how to manage a green, which is your color personality type for work. So in the old Google, it wouldn't have any idea what that meant, right? Because you couldn't optimize for it that way. So it's looking for management tips based on the popular guide, because now in the knowledge graph, it has associated those, and the machine learning understands this through the process of getting data fed back into it. This is just a geeky thing that explains the whole process. That's just a diagram. So it just connects, see up there, connects the words to the concepts. So Marvel is like the subject, and all the characters are part of the concept. So the storylines or those kind of things. So this is neural matching. So why does my TV look strange? Does anyone ever have that soap opera effect? Don't get as much anymore, but do you remember when it first, it was so bad, right? So I'm watching this, like, I think I was watching the 300, and it looked like it was on a stage in a soap opera set. It was just horrible. Did it? Yeah. So Google knows that most people type in soap opera effect related to that query. That's what they click for. So over time, the neural matching knows, you can say, why does my TV look strange? And most people are going to be like, because my TV looks like a soap opera. Not that my TV has a cat on it or something, right? Mine usually does. My cat likes to sit on my TV. Well, in front of it. They're too thin. And then over here is super synonym. I can never say that word. Super synonyms. So this is where they understand that change means something different in every sentence. And that's because of BERT. Right? So these all work together. So again, that's why you may never see the word on the page, because they're matching the synonyms, or they're doing the neural matching where they know what it means, but the words aren't in the actual copy. It's really good to do an entity graph. There's a lot of tools that let you do that. You see what entities are related, so you're using the entities that Google knows, because the more they do machine learning, the more specific you have to be. So what's the difference? We just talked about this. Right brain is just the concept. Neural matching is linking the words to the concept on the page instead of writing dog 20 times or 100 times in right. So the helpful content update. Anyone get hit by that? There's not a lot. Did you? Yeah, it's not a lot of information from Google on the helpful content update yet. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit of my theory. It's all machine learning. So again, first ranking signal is machine learning. It was not an update. It's a ranking signal. So they rolled out a ranking signal. It's the first time they've ever done it that I can think of. Am I wrong? Anyone know of another machine learning ranking signal? So this is the scoring process. So we had pre-scoring and we have post-scoring. This is your actual page score, right? It seems to be, I just gave you all their details so you can read their information. It seems to be an extension of these algorithms. So it's not just about content being helpful, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's also, does anyone remember the original Penguin? I actually had a discussion, I think it was a Google engineer. He told me I was wrong. I was like, no, I'm not. And I got the Matt Cutts blog. He said, oh my gosh, you're right. So the original Penguin wasn't just about links. It was about all the web spam, over optimization. Looked at all that and you would lose your site. And then over the time, it made mostly links. But so that version of Penguin, Panda is about low quality on the site, right? So it looks like they took a lot of this stuff and put it in there. It's not the only thing, but it's a live algorithm, machine learning algorithm. Another Dally one. It's an angry SEO. Doesn't look angry to me. I won't say what it looks like, but looks like he's doing like a duck lips picture or something. So it was not an update. It was not an update. It was an update just because it rolled out. It will update because like Penguin real time, which I don't think is gone. I just think this is a combination of all those to see if they can like get rid of the search engineers that do all that work and just do it with ML. But so it rolls out. It takes about 2 months to catch up. Anything Google does, like if you see an update, so on the core updates, I feel so sad. They're like, we're rolling out a core update tomorrow. And people are like, should I remove this content? Should I do this? I'm like, oh, that boat sailed 2-3 months ago. Do you remember how many queries does Google do? Trillions, right? So if they're doing an update, they've taken that data like months ago. Now they may be continually updating during the update, but so this is what happens on that. You also will experience a penalty. It's really manual action, but you'll devaluation for 1 to 2 months where they won't let you come back up. So they're like, nope, you got to hit, you're down for at least a month. You should be able to get back in 2 to 3 months if you fix what's wrong. And then it seems to target what we said, Panda and Penguin. Also, this is interesting. I don't have a definition yet. I just know John has said stuff. So people are like, I'm not getting my pages indexed. Has everyone seen that on Twitter? Like people are like, I have launched 1,000 pages and we've got like 2 index. And John's like, well, you can't just be good quality anymore. You can't just be technically right. You can't just have good content. It must be useful. He said that about 3 months before the helpful content update rolled out. We all know Google doesn't say things just to say them. John doesn't use words that Google doesn't approve. So my guess is he was kind of foreshadowing useful. So what do people think useful would be? But more than that, everyone, how many documents satisfy the query? Satisfy with something unique, right? Now, I'm not saying that you have to be like crazy, because there's also a thing about if you're too unique, you're not going to rank for it either. And you can't get it. Okay, I'm going to say this real quick, not to veer off, but featured snippets have a consensus factor that they use all this stuff to determine. That's not used anywhere else in search. They even say it on the page. But if you're trying to get featured snippets and you're like, people are like, tea is awesome with lemon. You're like, no, tea sucks, put in oil. You're never ranking because that's not what people talk about. But that's only in featured snippets. It's nowhere else. So is your content differentiating itself? Are you doing something extra? Because you search for a medical thing and like Healthline and WebMD and all of them have basically the same article, right? They just rewrote each other's or they got it from a physician, content supply or something. So make sure you have a writer who's putting like some creativity into it.
On your third bullet, you say it takes 2 to 3 months to catch up.
Yeah.
Is that just what you've seen?
No, that's what Google says.
Oh, okay. I know in the
Yeah.
past, you've done, you said you won't see updates until the next 4 hours.
They usually are that way. core update's the only one that in the middle you might get a recovery. That's because it's core ranking factors and they're tweaking those all the time. But when it comes to this, when they actually say in the documentation that it could take you 2 to 3 months and you're definitely gonna be down for a month, you're like put in the timeout box like you're a hockey player and they like, ooh, you gotta go sit there for a little while. But think about it. So many people are using basically the same content, just rewritten a little bit. Doesn't mean you have to be crazy cool, but what kind of content would mimic everybody else's content? AI content, right? So if you're putting some creativity, remember, AI can't be creative. If I sat here and I said to Janti, I'm going to make up a word. We're going to use fuzzy, buzzy, bunner, bunny. And you're like, what? When we decide what that means, we just created something. AI can't do that. AI can only take what it's trained on and reformulate it and regurgitate it. So it may look like it was written by a human, but it's using all the same things everybody else is. So you want to put unique. You want to have just good writers. You put a little unique twist on it. Right? These are all the documents you should read about the content update. I can't go over, I don't have that much time. There's so much to it because it's all about the technical, because it's Panda, Penguin, and all those mixed together, and that affects almost everything you do on your website. I do think, though, I put in something about AI content and bots. It came back like a helpful content update. I put that in. I called it Bohotus. So maybe we should just change helpful content update to Bohotus. Yeah, I know. I hate how they name them now. If you're older, you know they used to give them fun, cool names, and now it's like helpful content. So again, we just talked about that. AI can't create anything. It only can recognize patterns and repeat and regurgitate according to what it was trained on. See, I said, see, there's a hashtag. Let's change it. So now we get to mom. And yeah, I'll make it. Mom, multitask unified model. I just wish they'd name this stuff like those normal names, right? Have people encountered mom yet? Have you used mom, seen mom? You know you have, but you just don't know you have. Yeah, so they use it a lot in some of the off stuff, like not the search capacity. Again, for you guys for later, but basically it just means they can take all the media, all the text, interpret what it means, pull it all together and make a result. It also can write content. So I have a theory, and this is just my conspiracy theory for the day. You know how they keep changing our titles and descriptions? Because when they use mom to rewrite content, they can't take a title and description from the content. So they have to learn how to write them and what works. And that's why they test those things on your websites. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Because they do stupid things like change the pipe to a dash. Right? Have you guys seen that? That's very frustrating. So anyway, so all these modalities come together into learning models, and they can do sentiment analysis, although Google doesn't do sentiment analysis in search. 1,000 times more powerful than BERT. So it also saves them a lot of money because it's able to do things very quickly and it's able to create full results. Now, this is why they don't deploy it everywhere in search. They have deployed it in search in some places. I'll show you one example. But because of bias. I remember the person that got fired for AI? That's his quote. Right? So AI has a lot of failings because it only can repeat, regurgitate, collect, recognize patterns on what it's trained on. And so it's very easy for AI to go, phew, Microsoft bot, Facebook hanging up on me, right? So they can't just roll it out everywhere in search because search affects people's lives tremendously, right? You look up a disease or finances or something and they use mom and it's all wrong. And then what happens, right? So they're trying to be very careful about doing that. Do everyone remember these throughout the pandemic? This is a mom result. Someone went around and it collected the statistical data, and now it's much more reduced, but back in the day it had mappings and all sorts of graphics, and that was all created by mom. So this wasn't anybody at Google that sat down and put this together like it used to be. Literally the mom took images, text, audio, video, put it all together for this COVID result. And you can see up here too, all that stuff. So all that's mom. So it shows you optimize from machine learning algorithms and ranking signals. AI is always changing. So some things, yes, like neural matching, look up the knowledge graph, see if there's entities related to what you're trying to rank for. Put those things in the article. If it works, don't force it. But if you're writing Marvel Comics and you want to also write about all the characters and you mention that stuff, then you're going to get more search results, more visibility in search. But generally speaking, like, don't go to a rank brain result and go, we're going to take this over, because it's going to change completely because it's all AI. So it's important to feed the machine learning the right signals and interpreters. Signals being like content entities, or interpreters being schema. Also, real quick to remind, people think Google uses NLP, natural language processing. It doesn't. That would be me saying, hey, Jonty, how are you today? What do you say? Yeah. Did you have to interpret that in your head? My language? Right. Because that's NLP. If Google did NLP, it would understand me as I speak to you, and it wouldn't need to interpret. It uses entities, machine learning, schema, because it needs to understand what it's about. So a recipe article, your ingredients, your, I can't think of everything right now, time, temperature. And then Google goes, schema says this is temperature. Great. That's data I can just pull right back. It says this is the ingredient list. I can just pull it right back. So when you put schema on your site, it doesn't help you rank, but it helps the machine learning go, this is exactly what I'm looking at. So when someone searches for your site, Google's already determined it, didn't have to guess. Don't have to guess anything. So when you get everything right, you give the right signals, it's like that. And when the AI gets it wrong, it's demon baby. This is a happy laughing baby, by the way, from that original picture. So this all sounds like, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's really easy. You write, you have good writers. Don't use AI because it just sucks. Google can identify it, by the way, but that's not why. Sorry. I got to wrap up. Use natural conversational language. When I optimize somebody's writing, I don't tell them anything first except what the main keywords are. I let them write. Because then I can come back and I can optimize those things. So they're just little tweaks, right? If you tell a writer, you have to do this and structure it this way, the writer's going to be like, okay, you're going to get crap content because writers don't write that way. That's not how their brains work. They get in a flow, they write something, then you come back and you can make it better. So that Google wants, the more it does this, is I see this all the time now, it drives me crazy. Websites are all flat architectures. I do site auditing. I did like 4 site audits last month. Every single one, flat architecture. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because you're not telling Google what your topical hubs are. Now Google, we don't care the name of the URL. We only care in the link. And I'm like, John, but that's your URL. So if you care in the link, you must care in the URL too, right? Well, no, it's not the same thing. I'm like, John, it's the same thing. But anyway. So that's the breadth of content. Make sure you create holistic content. Google actually looks, if you have 100 pages and you have 1 page on coffee, you're not going to rank for coffee over the site that has 100 pages and 10 pages on coffee. So don't just put garbage on your site to try to rank. That doesn't work anymore. You want to put content that's related, but depth and breadth and specificity. I can't say, cannot speak. My mouth is so dry. So you'll get like, the topical hubs? Do people do that? Know what that is? I know people call them silos, pillows, towers. Topical hubs is what I was brought up with. So you'll be like coffees, and there'll be a main page about coffee. And then it'll be like coffees of the world and types of coffee. And then you have pages about that. And then you have subpages. And you don't want to go too deep, like 3 levels deep. If you're more than that, you need more content separation. But you want your pages to be very topically focused once they get past that top hub page. That's like, here I am. And Google's like, hey, this is about coffee. They write about coffee. Oh, they write about coffees of the world. Oh, and they have types of coffee. And then they have types of coffee in America and the types of coffee in UK. And then they know this is your topic. And they can tell by the linking inside the site that that's your topical relevancy. Don't do flat architecture. It's death for a site. So this is a little bit older, but it's candy results. So I just used it again. This is how you can tell a lot of times what Google's entities are, the related entities. When they put those buttons on top, those are their knowledge graph related entities. So if you don't have the tool, just go do a search. Schema, we talked about this. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. Does everyone use schema? Yay! Usually I used to when I asked, like before the pandemic, it's like 10 people. So this is like we said, the code that tells Google what that page is about. And again, I got ahead of myself. So if you don't use schema, Google's got to guess. Was this recipe, is this about ingredients? I don't know. It looks like an ingredient list, but maybe it's not. If you say ingredients, it's like, that's ingredients. So it allows us to tell Google what our site's about, what our page is about. And so it acts as the interpreter to teach. And this is actually a big part of machine learning, is the interpreter. That's not me just saying interpreter. That's actually the term they use. Because it's machine learning, they have to be able to interpret. So do you stand out? I'm really almost done. So we give Google a clear understanding of what our pages mean. So you're happy. Last thing, well-formed text. This is Kurzweil. Does everyone know Kurzweil? It's one of his original documents about well-formed text. Don't write bad. Don't use a lot of conjunctions. Don't use, unless you're like scientific stuff or academic, that's different. Simple, 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 because I have to parse your sentences. The more complicated the sentences, the more difficult it is for them to understand what the sentences are about. You know what they love? Questions. You know how FAQs do so well? It's not just because Google likes FAQs. It's because machine learning can parse questions really easily. Who, where, when, why, how, right? Sentence structure is almost always the same. So if you do a question, and don't force a question, but if it works for that topic, question in your title, answer it right in your each one, and right below, Google's like, oh, I got a question, I got an answer. Awesome. I don't need to interpret anything. I got the question, I got the answer, and I can put it in a featured snippet, or I can put it in all those other organic placements. Sorry. So Google is an answer engine, but also partially because it's how it works. I'm big on process, right? If Google could do it another way, they probably would, but questions and answers are simple. Saves them money, saves them resources. So this is the real simple thing you need to do. Think intent, query, terms and context, and questions. This is how you write your content for machine learning. So all that stuff breaks down to this, right? So you want searching, thinking queries, not keywords. Write in natural conversational language, make it a little unique, be creative. Write holistically, so you want not just one page on something, you want a section on it if you want to rank for it. Focus on depth and breadth, and also specificity. Don't make your one page about 20 things. I see these now with the guides on the top, and they're like, we write about 20 things on one page. Don't do that. Google doesn't know what that page is about anymore, and it won't pull it back, right? You can do something where you can make it look like it's all the same page. There's a coding technique that Google has. News uses it a lot for articles to roll in after each other. They all have their own URL. So the user thinks it's one page. So if you really want to present it that way, there's a way to do it, but don't make it all one page. Add your structured data and your well-formed text. Add questions when possible. When you get it right, this is what happens. This is DALL-E. I put in slow and efficient snail. It gave me a slow and efficient snail, right? Because that's exactly what the description probably is of efficient but slow of a snail. So it didn't change it. Machine learning is like, yeah, that's what you asked for. That's what I gave you. I didn't give you the thing I created. And remember this one, when I get it wrong, I got demon baby, right? So you don't want demon baby. So remember, they're prone to hallucinating. So that's it.